All right, here we go.
Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone, and it's caught! Jelani Woods! Touchdown! INDY!
A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up. Got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest.
I mean, that's a goddamn Emmy winner right there.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody, welcome aboard on this Monday. Appreciate you being with us. October 16. That means taxes are due today. But, hey, thanks a lot for joining us. Appreciate you. Don't forget it. We are powered by Andy Moore Honda. Just go to andymoorehonda.com to get more to your door. And the best in new and used vehicles. Plenty to get to on the program today. A little bit of news over the weekend. If you didn't see that, Greg Rakestraw will be joining us first. Don Fischer on the docket. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star and Rob Cassidy from Rivals.com as well. Greg, are you there, by the way?
Friend.
We've got Greg Rakestraw live with us first. We'll jump in with him and talk a little bit about, well, first of all, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. About yourself this morning?
It was an easy weekend. I did not travel to Ann Arbor, so I always love when I don't have to go to an away game and get to stay home and watch great games. I was just, all I cared about was looking forward to watching that Oregon-Washington game.
And that was obviously a very good game. And so I'll actually start just by directing a question at you. What is the overwhelming feeling of Hoosier Nation watching Michael Penix be as successful as he has been?
It's bittersweet. I can, that's very quick to answer. Bittersweet. And I say that because everybody wants to see him. I know that I want him to win the Heisman. I think he deserves to win the Heisman. I think that Washington may or may not be the number one team in the country. And I say that only because I still don't know how good Michigan is, although they look pretty damn dominant. But other than that, on the other side, yeah, they would love for him to be in cream and crimson and slinging that ball around. But you'd have to have a lot more with that besides just Michael. And I think that's what he has out in Washington.
Fair enough. Fair point.
But yeah, but it's fun to watch him. I'll tell you that, because golly, man, it's just like a gunfight when you watch those guys play.
And I'll tell you this. I mean, I remember how great 2020 was. I remember how bad 2021 was for Michael. So I think he had gone as far as he could with Indiana University. You know, deep down, I think I would be rooting for the kid. I'm not emotionally enough attached to it anymore to kind of say one way or the other. But I understand to some degree the jilted lover side of things. And even if you're happy for the kid, you can sit there and just shake your head and say, look at what we had and couldn't figure out in Bloomington.
Well, not only that, they ended up playing against another past quarterback this weekend in Ann Arbor, as well as Jack Tuttle ended up as the number 2 quarterback for Michigan.
Absolutely. And the funny thing is that a friend of mine's daughter is one of the team managers for Indiana. And she was on the Michigan sideline for at least part of the second half. And so she posts a picture of Jack giving her a hug as he walks by and recognizes her during the second half of that game on Facebook.
That's awesome. I'd love to see that. Yeah, there's just football at IU is a whole, that's a discussion that could be had for quite some time. But the Colts, on the other hand, have had I don't want to say a rocky year, but it's definitely been ups and downs. Maybe some more ups and downs, but yesterday was not one of those.
You know, Jim, I thought yesterday was kind of a reality check. Even at 3-3, and I'm not even sure from a record standpoint, just overall quality of play, the Colts are probably farther along than I gave them credit for.
Yeah.
Going into the season. But at the same time, Jacksonville's pretty good. And going in pretty much to a man, everybody said, listen, Jacksonville's the best team in the AFC South. Well, yesterday they played like it.
Yeah.
And whether you want to talk about, Gardner Minshew throwing 3 picks or having 4 turnovers in total, if you want to dissect the fact that Colts only ran the ball 17 times, I'll still say the Colts run the ball successfully in every game except for 2, and it's the same team they played in those 2, and you can draw the conclusion as to what the issue is there. Jacksonville's just simply pretty stout defensively. The Colts have had a lot of things happen in 6 weeks. So, like, the overall product, I think fans should be pretty pleased with or pretty happy with. But having to digest all of the Jonathan Taylor stuff, and now seemingly that is behind us, but now having to deal with 2 or 3 different Anthony Richardson injuries, we know he's out at least until November the 12th. There's a possibility he is done for the year. And I think there'll be more clarification that will come down the pike on that over the course of the next day or 2. But it's been a lot for Colts fans to take in. So, yesterday, I'm not sure if yesterday was a step back. I think yesterday was more of a true acknowledgement of, all right, the Colts are okay. Jacksonville's pretty good. I think Jacksonville legitimately is one of the best teams in the AFC. I think that's why things played out yesterday the way they did.
Yeah, and they may have overplayed their talent or where they are up to this point right now. With even though they were 3-3, the loss to the Rams, I was there for that when they were down 23-0 midway through the third, and they were able to come back and force that game into overtime. So none of these were really, this was not expected this year. It was kind of reminds me of the Pacers last year. It's like, okay, this is going to be a year where we end up with a decent draft pick because things are not expected to be that great. And then they kind of play better than you expect. But you said the word earlier, reality. Reality may be catching up with the Colts, and that usually tends to happen faster rather than later in the NFL.
Well, I will say, though, Jim, is that the schedule, frankly, is kind to the Indianapolis Colts. They have a third-place schedule. The division that they drew in terms of the NFC division they're playing this year is also the South. And now I'm sure anybody feels great in that division. The Browns are coming off of a high, obviously, and the Browns defensively resemble the Jacksonville Jaguars. In other words, it's going to be on Gardner Minshew. You hope the running game can establish a beachhead, but you're not quite sure. After that, the Saints are mediocre. Following that, you get the Panthers, who are awful. You get the Patriots, who are as bad as they have been seemingly under the Bill Belichick era, if not for the last 25, 30 years. You get a bye after that. The Buccaneers are mediocre. Tennessee's not good. That's who's next on your schedule. So here's a crazy statement. The Browns may be the best team the Colts play for the next 7 weeks. Let that marinate there for a minute. So there is still a lot of possibilities for this Indianapolis Colts football team. Even if Anthony Richardson is out for the season, I still think this can be a really good year for this team. I think we will learn a lot about this football team Sunday afternoon back at home. Let's see how they bounce back from adversity every time. They followed a loss with the win every time so far this year. Let's see if they can keep that trend up next Sunday afternoon.
If Anthony Richardson is out for the season, and I understand that if it's even close, that you don't take that risk. But what does that do as far as setting him back to getting? Because everyone knows there is an acclimation period into the NFL, and losing an entire year has got to be a little bit of a setback for him.
And I think you unintentionally put the proper word in there. A little bit of a setback. Because yes, what's the one thing he needs more than anything else? Experience. He's had it to a certain degree. He's gone through training camp. When he's been out there, he's looked good. He's been effective. He's never been overwhelmed by anything that he has dealt with, during the course of the, 3 or 4 games he's had a chance to play. And so, yes, you'd feel better about this season if he had played the full 17 games or played as many of those as possible. But even if this is the end of this season for him, I do think what you have in him. And so a little bit of a setback, yes, but I still think the Colts feel that now the only question is durability / health. I don't think there's a question mark about, can this kid play in the National Football League? I already think that's kind of been answered. Now it's just a matter of, all right, Can he play the way he wants to play and remain healthy? And that is an obvious question mark that we won't have the answer to until maybe even at some point in time next season, let alone this season.
Greg Rakestraw with us. You may know Greg wears about 80 different hats, VP of ISB Sports Network, where they produce an abundant, just all kinds of different content. A lot of IHSAA. We're coming down to the end of the season for football, and 6A is just looking like it's going to be exciting as hell.
Jimmy, I would say this. It's the best combination of quality teams and parity that we have had in now the decade of having 6A football. You know, more often than not, we have had a team that you kind of knew, hey, as long as the bus got there on time, they're going to win.
Right.
That's been Center Grove the last 2 or 3 years. That was Warren Central one year. That was Ben Davis one year. Then we had kind of a year in between where I'm not sure anybody was all that good. and Carmel ended up being the team winning. That was a very parity-filled tournament. This is the best combination of really good football teams, but also multiple teams having a chance to win. I do think the best 3 teams in the southern half of the draw is Brownsburg and Ben Davis, and they play each other the opening game next Friday night. That's the game that I will have next week. And then at some point in time, Center Grove will be waiting in the wings. Center Grove, I do think will get a good game from Franklin Central. I do think Center Grove will get a good game from Warren Central. Those would be kind of 2 out of the 3 weeks, for Center Grove leading up. It would be the semi-state, and you would think it'd either be Ben Davis or Brownsburg. It could possibly be Cathedral. In the north, HSE, Fishers, and Westfield are all solid. There's not much that separates those 3 teams other than they're in 2 different sectionals. HSE and Fishers are in sectional 3, Westfield's in sectional number 4. So the fact that I can just kind of spit at you multiple teams, maybe it's this team, maybe it's this team, we really haven't had that in 6A. But I do think they are good football teams, especially BD, Brownsburg, Center Grove.
Yeah, I've enjoyed Kyle Nedrip joins us each Wednesday as well, and I've been just enjoyed every week. I'm like, wow, look at these games. You can just tell it's so the parity is just amazing, and just looking forward to that tournament. And for those who don't know, Greg, where can they find the content to watch some of these games?
Well, I appreciate that. Obviously, we have a game of the week on my Indy TV 23 in Indianapolis, and because there's no 5A and 6A this week, Pelham Heights and Greenfield Central, 7-2, visiting 8-1. Both those teams potentially top 10 teams in 4A going into the postseason. Greenfield Central certainly will be. The Arabians might join them in the top 10 this week. Those 2 teams played to a 43-38 game back in week number 4. Looking forward to heading out to Greenfield Central for that one. But in terms of online, ISCSportsNetwork.com. But also a reminder, once we get to the state tournament, everything is through the IHSAA Champions Network online. So you go to IHSAATV.org. The good news for consumers is the 3 rounds of the sectional or 2 and 5A, 6A, and the regional championship, those are all free streams. So the next 4 weeks, everything online is free, but go through IHSAATV.org.
You heard it right there, peoples. From the man, Greg Rakestraw. Greg, we'll look forward to it.
Thanks, Jim. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, boss. Thank you. Greg Rakestraw joining us here from ISB Sports and also part of the Colts. So plenty to get there. Hey, up next, Don Fischer joins us. So we want to make sure we get to that. A little bit of news for Indiana over the weekend. Word is, and we'll get to all of everybody jumping on the Andy Moore Honda hotline. Have not been able to give you guys a shout out yet, but back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, including Don Fischer, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
I'm excited for this.
See, I kept online with or on time without you even reminding me.
You didn't even need my help. My alarm went off, and you were already doing it.
Sure, I was already, but I was past time about a minute. Holy moly. Let's see. Holy shit. All right, Don Boy, you're there he is.
All right, guys. And it's
Hey, Mr. Don.
How you guys doing?
Oh, I'm all right. Anything new in your world?
If there was, I would probably not join you today.
all right, guys.
I'll split it probably half football and then, of course, other half Liam McNeely.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Sure, I don't care. Anything to take away football conversation.
I can make it 25-75.
All right, we go live here in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday. We've hit the midway point of the month, October 16th, and the great Don Fischer joining us now. Sir, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I cannot complain. That cold weather came in, or that fall weather came in over the weekend. A little bit of rain, a little temperature drop, 20-degree temperature drop. Boy, I saw some golfers out, but they were all in windbreakers and long pants. So it's the challenge of the golfers now, buddy. It's the true golfers out there.
Yeah, there's no question about that. The good news is I'm not a true golfer anymore because I don't get out there unless it's over 50 degrees. It's got to be 55 or something like that before I even decide to trek out there, or the wind's got to be down. If the wind wasn't blowing,
that makes a gigantic difference.
Oh, yeah. The wind's always blowing this time of year anyway, so I didn't get out yesterday. I was hoping to, but the only sun came out for about 5 minutes yesterday. That was about it. And so I decided to stay home, watch the Colts on TV, and that was a bust. So
yeah, we just finished up with Greg Rakestraw. So yeah, that didn't go well, but not a good weekend for Indiana football overall, period. The Hoosiers traveled to Ann Arbor, and no one expected much. Let's be honest. This is a team that many consider the number one team in the country. I still don't know if it's Washington or Michigan in my head, because Washington is such an offensive juggernaut that I'm like, I'd love to see Michigan try to keep up with that. At the same time, Michigan is they're machine-like. They are just machine-like, and they take one guy out and they bring another guy in. Their linemen, I think I saw a stat, their defensive linemen, no one has had over 30 snaps. There's like 9 or 10 of them. So it's just like they take this robot out and bring this one in. And I look at the stats, Don. J.J. McCarthy only throws for 222. Running back, no running back rush for over, including Blake Corum. He is 52 total yards. Right. Hall was 58. So no one had these gigantic output of days, and yet they're able to just crush Indiana, 52-7 overall. And then Indiana now back to, I guess, a quarterback quarterback race. Brendan Sorsby in, and I was happy to see that. I think that they've got to make a decision there, man, and give a guy the snaps that needs the snaps. I've said it was Sorsby from the start of the season, which doesn't mean jack, but here we are again.
Well, we are. That's exactly where we're at, because now we do have – it's not a controversy. It's literally trying to figure out who's going to be the guy. And now it also becomes a factor that Dexter Williams is in the mix, in the sense that he was listed as questionable on Saturday. He was dressed for the football game. And he's been practicing, trying to get back well again physically to compete for this spot. And perhaps now he has become that. So we're just going to have to wait and see, because now you may have a three-headed scenario where you've got to make a decision. And from what we've seen at this point, there just hasn't been consistency in the two redshirt freshmen, which we knew that was probably going to be an issue this year, because they are young guys. They're going to make mistakes. They still have lots to learn. and they haven't had the experience level that a player like Dexter has had, which, even though he played sparingly last year, he did get in several ball games and played well when he was in there, helped Indiana to a win over Michigan State. And believe me, I thought Purdue was on the ropes last year when he was in the ball game, if you remember watching that contest, because they didn't have any answer for him. But the truth of the matter is, when he went down, Indiana had no answer for Purdue. So literally at this point, there is a quarterback situation that has to be taken care of. And we're going to find out if that will take place this week or not, because if Williams can't go this week, that's fine. But at some point, he's going to become a factor, I think. And we'll just have to wait and see when that is.
And when he does, though, my question is, what is that going to do to the offense? Because I don't recall what he threw, 2 total passes in the game against Michigan State, which they won. Does that mean the passing game is out the window? Because his running just left people shaking in there. They didn't know which way to go. Right. He shocked Michigan State. And so I don't know what they would do with the offense. Will they go to a wildcat? Maybe there's just tons of different scenarios, but you cannot abandon the passing game.
No, you can't. And honestly, at this point, who's the better passer? Well, Saturday didn't show us anything because neither one of those guys performed well. The fact of the matter is, at this juncture, this football team can't run the football. They've got to throw it. If Dexter Williams comes into play, maybe they can run the football, and then maybe they can't pass it. I don't know. The honest to goodness truth is, the coaching staff has to make some decisions here that are going to be critical to the rest of the season. And if Dexter's ready to go, which he was listed as questionable on Saturday, which means he was available. So I just don't know which way they're going to lean at this juncture. And because Tom Allen has not been able to make a decision on who the quarterback is at this point, I just have that gut feeling that Dexter's going to be in the mix.
Well, there's no question, especially with him listing him on that report. And that was not the game I would bring him back. That was not the game I would bring Josh Henderson back. I expect Josh Henderson to be available next week as well. The Michigan game was not a game that I'm bringing a guy back off the injury list, because you know what you're going against, and so it's just not the smart thing to do. Quickly, want to switch gears to basketball.
One other thing I want to say about the football side of it. I thought what we saw in the first quarter of that game by Indiana was pretty special.
Good. Absolutely.
I really like what Rod Carey did with the offense. It looked like they had it going in the early part of that contest. I don't think there's much question about that. I think there is definitely improvement in that area. What is that? How does that translate to the rest of the game? Well, not very well, because after that, Michigan woke up a little bit, and whether they were asleep or not, what Indiana did in the early going, I thought was impressive. Even defensively, I thought the defense clearly played well in the early going as well.
3 sacks, Don. 3 sacks in the first quarter alone, and he hadn't been sacked 3 times since the national semifinal game, and they end up getting 4 at least.
And that's what was encouraging, but it was just briefly encouraging. So it's going to be interesting now to see if this team can pick up the pieces. Because after you get beat 52-7 by a team that just absolutely dominated you for 3 quarters, you find out a little bit about yourself and whether or not you have that resiliency that we've talked about in the past, because this is a football team right now that still has all kinds of things to play for. They still have a chance of getting to a bowl game, but they've got to win 4 of their last 6. And I still think there are 4 games on the schedule they can win. But they've got to regroup, and they've got to start having confidence in themselves. And the defense that we saw early on that we thought would carry this team has got to get back to that point again, because they have not played well, in my opinion, for several games now.
Yeah, I sent out a couple tweets in the early going saying, hey, you got to like what you're seeing right now from the Indiana offense. They were moving things around. That's the first time Michigan has trailed this year when they were down 7-0. That is only the 5th touchdown all year that Michigan had given up. And Indiana was actually a heel out of bounds from scoring 14 points on Michigan and being the only team to have done that. So there were bright spots on the offense, and it's just getting it together. You've got a new offensive coordinator. Now he's trying to decide between quarterbacks. It's like preseason all over in the middle of the season. They just have to get it done expeditiously, I would say.
No question.
On the other side of things, great news for Indiana basketball as they land their first commitment of the 2024 season from a 5-star, Liam McNeely from Montverde Academy, number 13, a power forward. It is nothing but champagne and cocktails all around in Bloomington when that happened.
Well, there's no question. I know McNeely has been on their radar for a long time, a guy that they coveted because he is a great shooter, 6'8", shoots the outside jump shot with no reservations whatsoever, can knock it down. He's not the superstar athlete that some guys are, but you don't need to be if you could shoot it. But I can't answer the question about, I haven't seen enough of his highlights, that kind of thing. I have seen some, but he reminds me a little bit of a guy like Ted Kitchell. I think he's probably more athletic and quicker and that kind of thing than what Ted was, but he's got no qualms about shooting the basketball. And he is he's obviously a great outside shooter. So that's something that
45% from behind the arc last year, 40% right now this year.
Yeah, that's what they need. They need shooters. That's something that Indiana has needed for some time, as we know. And even though they've had a couple of guys that could knock down threes, but they didn't do it consistently. And this is a guy that can add that. The Dick kid from Kansas, the last year is now in the NBA. It might be that kind of player for this Indiana basketball team. And if they got a guy like that, it's going to be special. But at the same time, you just have to wait and see. It takes time to become a college basketball player. Everybody knows that. But this guy is highly regarded by everybody in the country. Who did it come down to? Indiana and Kansas for him?
Yes, and that is the second consecutive time Indiana has beat out not Kansas for this very position, and that's another major win for Mike Whitson. With Mackenzie Mbako, that was the same situation. It came down to was originally at Duke, but then it came down to Kansas and Indiana, and he chooses Indiana. And so I had put out on the board, on the Hoosier.com board on Friday, that you can count on Liam being a commitment because Kansas had just taken the commitment from Marquise Passmore, who played the same position. And so I think that they had acknowledged, waved the white flag at that time and took him. But now you've got what's next? What can he do, or what comes after that? Because the first thing they also asked him is he's going to be in the ear of Boogie Fland. He said he's going to be talking to Derek Queen, his teammate. He wants them to come to Bloomington. So now Mike Whitson has a great recruiter that can actually start recruiting. He couldn't do that until he committed because he didn't know where he was going. But that is going to be of great importance because he's teammates with Derek Queen. So he's going to be talking to him all the time about, dude, come on up. We can play with Malik Renew. And then he's going to be talking to Boogie Fland as well. And I think that could carry weight. Not that it does or doesn't sometimes, but I think that they can see that there would be something special in that group. And I think that will have an impact maybe.
Well, it always does when a player goes and he's got friends out there that he wants to play with. Sometimes that plays a factor. So we'll just have to wait and see. But the truth of the matter is, at this juncture, Mike has gotten his first recruit for 2024, and it's a top 10 player, and everybody gets excited about that. And there's no question it's a coup for Mike, and that's a good thing.
And also, this is Indiana has not been in this position, first of all, for a long time, of being in these final 2 or 3 or 4, whatever, with all of these high-end recruits. We're not talking about top 100 guys, which are great. We're talking about top 10, top 15 players, and not 1, but 2, but 3. I think Boogie Flan is the top point guard in the country, and it's down to Indiana and Kentucky. And I think that when he sees that Indiana beat Kansas for this, and that's going to make a difference. When I promise you that Liam McNeely will be calling him to say, "Hey, man, come join me." And I just think that you can see the difference Mike Woodson has been able to make. It has taken a year or two to really get in the flow. I think it took him probably a year to get in the flow of college recruiting because it's different. But I think he goes in and kills it. Obviously, especially for people who thought that he wasn't going to be able to put in the time. He's making the trips. He's going to New York, going back to New York. He's going to Montverde. He's going wherever he needs to go to get that done. And that makes a difference. That these guys see that matters to them.
Well, as long as you get them and then you can coach them. That's the biggest thing. You got to be able to coach him, and I think Mike can do that. Obviously, Jalen Hood-Schifino was a terrific find for Indiana to get him, and what he did last year was really special for IU. Helped that ball club, pick up have one of its best seasons in a long time. Hopefully, that continues. But right now, this will be a transition year, I think, for Indiana because of the losses of the guys that left because of graduation, that kind of thing. And then, of course, the transfer portal and the pickups there. You've got a team this year that's going to be, I think, a team that's a transition year. I don't know it's going to be that special. We'll see. Obviously, they've got talent on this ball club. Does it all come together? There are so many questions and so many things that can happen during a season that can make it or break it. And we'll just have to wait and see how it all plays out. But I do like the fact that Mike has been able to get a top-notch recruit here, and probably another 1 or 2 of those guys will probably join Liam McNeely as on this Indiana basketball program for 2024.
Yeah, I expect at least one of them does, but we'll wait and see how that turns out. But Indiana recruiting obviously turning in the right direction, and they've got to continue with a good season. So they don't have to win the NCAA championship, but I think a continued progressive move. And this is a team that is going to show the talents of Mike Woodson, because you're going to have to marry talent that he has had before with the new guys, whether we're talking about Mackenzie Mbako or Kelly Ware, even Peyton Sparks and Anthony Walker. These are all new faces that are going to be playing a lot, but are going to have to be blended in to what's going on. Don, what's up next for you? Obviously, Wednesday night, I think, out at Chop Shop.
Yep, we'll be at the Chop Shop with Coach Allen, inside IU basketball with the head coach. And I think Casey Teagarden is going to be our assistant coach guest this week. He'll be live at the Chop Shop as well for our last segment of the show. So, yeah, going to be fun this week. And then, of course, a Rutgers team coming in that Indiana will celebrate homecoming and hopefully come up with a big win and a bounce-back win after a couple of tough losses.
That is a very, very important game for them. When does the Monday coaches show with Mike Woodson begin?
October 30th. That'll be the first show. That's a Monday. And those are Monday shows for the basketball program, not Wednesdays like it is for football.
And you're not required to dress up for Halloween on that first show, but you can if you wish.
Yeah, you can do whatever you want. I'm not dressing up. Trust me.
Don Fischer, we appreciate you, sir. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for having me, Jim. See you.
You bet. The great Don Fischer joining us here, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers. Lots more coming up. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star, Rob Cassidy from Rivals. We're going to be talking about the impact of the commitment of Liam McNeely and much more right here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Great stuff.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Great stuff. Liam McNeely. Dude shot 45% from 3 last year. That is a huge number.
Music to IU fans' ears.
Dude, that's a high number.
It's a nice clip.
Yep. Now, you don't know how to get clips out, do you?
I do if they're in here, but I don't know how to upload them to this program.
No, I meant posting clips, but that's all right.
No, and today's a day. On Fridays, I don't have students. Today, I have students, so the editing
That's all right.
is going to be difficult.
Yeah. Lost my pen.
Dustin's here. I'm going to pop him in, and we need to go live here in a second. Hey, Dustin.
RC, how you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you?
Not bad at all.
Good day, Dustin.
Good morning, Jim.
And Maxine. I'm sorry I left you out. I apologize.
She has stuff to say. Hopefully, she doesn't get too loud this morning.
She didn't get her proper due right there about me.
No, it's very.
She let me know, baby.
Exactly.
She says, "Hey, what about me?"
Like, I'm here too. Don't forget it.
What about me?
All right, gentlemen. We go live here in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, October 6. We're halfway through, joined now by Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. Make sure you give him a follow and be a subscriber. Keep local papers alive. You know, I was thinking yesterday, and I know this is going to sound like a howling at the moon or whatever, but there is nothing more I miss than sitting down and reading the paper and having to read the paper.
Sorry.
Not being able. She agrees. Maxine says, hell yes. I agree with that.
I have a lot of thoughts about this too.
I agree. I was just thinking about, I grew up reading the paper and I loved it. And I read so many more articles when it was in the paper as opposed to online. But I miss physically sitting down and reading the paper, having some coffee, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, we've obviously devalued it. One, as a society, too, obviously, just as, as an industry. I mean, obviously, because so many people read it online, so many people read it on mobile, it's obviously come to the point where making it a huge priority the way that we used to doesn't make sense financially anymore, which is a shame because, to your point, agreed. I just been reading college. I mean, I think I got like every paper. We got the New York Times. We got the USA Today. We got so many things for free at Penn State. They took care of all that stuff for us. It's an issue with Maxine today. But yeah, no, I mean, like obviously things changed. And so, obviously the print product we're putting out is not the same print product as we used to have. Now it's still out there. I mean, obviously if you get the Herald Times in Bloomington, if you get the Indy Star, you still can get a print product. Obviously, our deadlines are much, much, much different. You're not getting last night's late games in there. You're not getting anything from a game that kicked off at 7:30 or whatnot. So that's obviously a shame. The paper still exists. I mean, you can still read a good newspaper out there if you're looking for, more. So some of the in-depth stuff we still make sure is in there. You can get something valuable out of a print product, but it's obviously not the same that it used to be.
Nope, but it is what it is, and that's life. Nothing's the same as it used to be, and so we can sit there and howl at the moon all we want. The Pacers are early on right now playing in the preseason. I don't know. How much do you take from the preseason in NBA? I know we take very little from the NFL. NBA is probably not quite the same. Did you notice this, by the way?
I did notice that. Hey, Vic.
That's back from when you played, man.
Sure.
Obviously. No, that's a Oladipo era jersey. No, I mean, so they're going into their first preseason home game tonight against Atlanta, and they've got Cleveland on Friday. So, I mean, I did see we don't travel for preseason. So I did not go to Memphis or Houston. So, I was watching both of those games on TV. Like basically what's the format? What's different? I mean, I'm not a guy that generally watched a lot of preseason NBA because I'm a baseball guy. I mean, I'm not, given the option from your, television, if you can only watch one game at a time, and generally you usually can, I'm picking playoff baseball over preseason basketball so many times over. It's not funny. I mean, that's my sort of, TV watching priority always. So I, just as a fan, did not watch a lot of preseason NBA. But, for the format, basically, I mean, you can take from the fact, obviously, if you put the best guys on the floor, you get to see what they look like. They don't have to win that game. So you're not seeing them go all the way out. But it's still those guys. You get to see what they're all about. You get to get some sense of rotations. You don't have to protect them the same way that you do football. Obviously, a guy, one bad hit and guy tears an ACL and everything's over. And obviously that can happen in basketball, but it's not a combat sport. It's a contact sport. It's not a combat sport. You're not, just busting yourself up with helmets and pads and everything. So, you don't have to be as careful with your quarterback, with your top players as you have to. I think what the Pacers have found so far in the early going in the first couple games, basically I think they saw some really good signs from their rookies. Jarris Walker, Ben Shepherd in particular, had some really good moments. I thought Aaron Nesmith had a really good game against Houston, scored 19 points. I think you saw some variance in his game, basically some ability to get downhill off the dribble that you didn't necessarily see last year. So you saw some adaptation there. You're looking for the same things, I think, or you're obviously looking for different things, but you're, as a writer or as a fan that's really, really juiced up and into it, you're trying to see, okay, how have these players changed? What's different from them from the last time I saw them? Have they added anything to their game? What do rotations look like? I mean, I think you've seen so far, the Pacers have put some cards on the table that way. It seems like the starting lineup is going to be Halliburton, Brown, Mathurin, Toppin, and Turner. And basically that's what it's been the first two games, or some variation.
I did not hear my name, Dustin.
Alas, Jim, you got to pick it up, man. You got to get better on defense. It's really important. You got to get better on your man-to-man D. You got to get better in your
The knee has been an issue. I'm not going to lie. The knee has been an issue.
It's tough. Defense is going to be really important this time, Jim. And if you're not picking it up on that end, you're not going to play. So I've been trying to tell you that for weeks.
I'm slacking. I'm slacking.
Yep. You can't get run over by screens anymore, man. It's really important. Get on that.
These guys are big and bad. I can't help it. How was your weekend?
It's great, terrific. We actually went up to South Bend and scored USC Notre Dame tickets. So
wow, big loss for USC.
Yeah,
I had said if they lose to Notre Dame, that to me they're out of the college football playoff just because of the game, but week before that where they have to go to overtime with a so-so Arizona team. Then Louisville, who beats Notre Dame, gets beat by Pittsburgh, and Indiana could have beaten Louisville. So it's a wonky thing.
Teams don't always play the same way all the time. I mean, just getting to watch that game up close. I mean, Irish just had a just terrific, game plan for Caleb Williams. I mean, just basically everything that you're supposed to do when it comes to a super athletic, very slippery quarterback, they did, and they did, from just really disciplined pass rush. Just being able to stay in lanes, not letting him get outside, not overdoing it to the point that you've got three guys in the backfield and Williams has passed all of them. They did a really good job of it just seemed like basically every time he escaped, there was somebody else right there. They did a great job of contain on the outside, really good job of perimeter tackling. It was just a really well put together game plan for a superstar. When you're dealing with, probably still, even if he doesn't win the Heisman this year, I think he's still the best player in college football. They did just tremendous work, keeping him pinned in. And I would say, just after the Arizona game, USC is going to lose more games. Like it's not an issue of, losing this one game to Notre Dame is going to keep them out. If they'd run the table in the Pac-12 after that, I still think they get in, but they're not running the table in the Pac-12. They're just not. I would be absolutely stunned if that team gets up. They're not physical enough. It's the same problem they had last year. They don't hit you hard enough on defense. They got pushed around and you kind of knew they were going to. Obviously, a lot of it is a lot of picks. I mean, Xavier Watts did phenomenal work. He had 2 interceptions plus the fumble recovery that he took back. But they just, it's Notre Dame was so clearly the better team, top to bottom. And it just, offensively, they don't have the same kind of juice. Sam Hartman is not Caleb Williams by any stretch of the imagination, but, they're not stopping Audric Estime. They're not. Obviously, again, they don't have a good enough offensive line to protect Williams well enough against a really good defensive team. So, USC is out of it, but it's not just because USC lost this game. I mean, they could get back into it with what's left back on their schedule. I know we looked at this, I think last week, and I'm going to call this up now, but just to kind of refresh my memory, who else they play. There's enough, tough games. Just basically, I'm sure I know they play Oregon. I got to check and see if they play Washington as I'm talking through this. Yeah, they get Washington and Oregon in back-to-back weeks. They get Utah next week. They've got UCLA left on the schedule. If they run the table, they get in. But there's just no way to me. I just cannot fathom a possibility that I don't even think they beat Utah, frankly. And I don't think they beat Washington and Oregon in back-to-back weeks. I'll be surprised if they win one of those 3 games.
Well, let me tell you, Oregon. I love that game. That was Oh my God, that was really
good.
Was maybe the most fun I've had watching a game this year. But Washington is for real, and Oregon probably should have won the damn game. I mean, if this was an Indiana game, boy, oh boy, would the fans be just ripping the throat out of the coach because he made an abundance of, boy, you want to talk about a riverboat gambler, going for it on 4th down, which everybody loves, but sometimes you got to be smart going into the half, kick the field goal, you pick up the 3 points, you get the ball coming out of the half. Boy, you really start to put the pressure on them, and just those two. The ones I get, but whoo, that was some bad moves, which he acknowledged.
Right. Yeah. I didn't catch all of it because we had it on, and obviously we're bouncing around going to the game and whatnot. But yeah, no, I definitely saw some complaints on that on Oregon's side about, just putting the ball, giving Michael Penix more opportunities. And what do you know, Michael Penix, per everybody who's talking out there, is your Heisman Trophy favorite. How about
without question? And Caleb Williams just dropped probably a bunch more. He was right there. First, he had to overcome Caleb Williams, which he did in last week, I believe. And now Caleb Williams is going to drop. So right now it's Michael Penix is his trophy to lose. To be honest with you,
I mean, obviously how many different ways that can go away.
All he has to do is lose a game and he'll get docked.
Sure. Yeah, I lose a game depending on how it goes and whatnot. And obviously, you still have the issue of it being there is an East Coast bias, or there is an Eastern bias. Generally, there's at least a east of the, there is a Central and Eastern time bias, I would say.
It's hard to watch those games. The fact that game was at 3:30 made a gigantic difference, because if that game's at 10 o'clock, it's not getting watched by nearly the amount of people. I was going to watch it no matter what. I thought it would have been a 10 o'clock game, but I didn't care. Sure. I was all in, baby. But it wasn't. It was a 3:30, a matinee game. That did Michael Penix a world of good. That did Kalen DeBoer in Washington a ton of good. They gained a lot of respect.
Yeah, no.
Because I look at Michigan, and I don't know how good they are. I know they're damn good, because they're dominant and they're deep, but they don't. I was talking, Don Fischer was on with us just before you joined, and even looking at their stats from the Indiana game, McCarthy throws for 222 yards. He only throws 17 passes. No, on a rushing side, Blake Corum, 52 yards. Hall had 58. And that's the BLM. No receiver had 100 yards. Loveland had 80. Right. And so they're just doing it. They're a machine. I think that they're just defensively right now. They're just shutting people down. But Indiana almost scored 14 on them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I mean, I think so. So yeah, I mean, to that point, the powerhouse teams in the East don't have a candidate yet. That doesn't mean they won't. It's still middle of October. You never know who's going to just jump into some of these things. But yeah, I mean, to your point, right now, Michael Penix is the guy standing up. He's second in calling this up now. He's second in Division I in passing, 2,301 yards. I think Carson Beck's a name that you got to kind of keep in mind. Quarterback at Georgia, he's at 21.47. Those are some big numbers. So you don't know. Another thing that's possible that you don't want to rule out is every once in a while your wide receiver can overtake a quarterback. Rome Odunze is a heck of a player, man.
Boy, he's probably a first-round draft pick next year, maybe.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. He's a first-round draft pick. Yeah, no.
I had Kalen DeBoer on the show earlier, right before the season started, and he talked about Rome Odunze. But it's not just Odunze. They've got multiple receivers that make plays. But Michael Penix, good Lord, some of the throws he makes, the one that was in the corner, that was perfection. That's an NFL throw right there.
It was. I mean, it is pretty remarkable to see the evolution. And when you think back to Jalen Polka's the other guy, had 6 for 118 and a touchdown, Giles Jackson. But yeah, I mean, like when you remember sort of him as a passer at Indiana, I mean, like he really came there, like everything was so on a line. Like it took him a while to figure out arc. Man, he has really figured out arc. Just the concept of touch and just being able to put the air under some balls, but also have to rifle it when he has to. You've really seen the whole package come together. It's taken a while. It wasn't all there right out of the gate, but there's always been arm strength and arm talent. But he has put some nuance to it. He has put some grace on it. And that's really just taken to the point where there's just nothing he does wrong. Nothing that stands out as a problem when you're watching the way that he throws the ball. He just seems so comfortable there. And obviously he's getting protection. He's got stud receivers. He hasn't, he's healthy. All of the above, is getting some breaks he never got at Indiana, obviously. But the way he throws the ball right now is pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and what fun to watch. But that Oregon team, other than the calls by Dan Lanning, woo, man, yes. They're never going to let up, and they are not a team. That's not a team I would ding if I was a poll voter. I mean, right. Okay, maybe you drop them a spot or two, but man, in that environment, the way they played, the actual reality of the fact that they maybe should have won the game if it wasn't for the way those calls went. They're a tough team, and I think that Washington. I think they're in different divisions. So they may meet them again in the Pac-12 championship, which that's who's going to the college football playoffs. And the only way the Pac-12 hardly gets a team into the Pac-12 into the
it's been years.
Playoffs.
It's been years. They don't have.
I don't know if Washington could go undefeated all the way to that point, lose a close game, and still get in. But I think that Washington, to me, they're 1A or 1B with Michigan right now.
Sure. I mean, they're up there. I mean, I think, obviously you can't, as we talked about before, Georgia obviously does not have a particularly tough schedule, but they are Georgia and they are defending champs and they are in the SEC. And basically if they run the table, I think just the way it sets out, this isn't the best SEC we've seen. If Bama runs the table in the SEC and they come in 11-1 into the SEC title game and Georgia beats them in the title game, I think Georgia gets in. I don't think you keep the defending champ out of the playoff. So I presume you'll still see Georgia getting one of those spots. I think you'll see certainly whoever comes out of the Big Ten East. I mean, don't forget, Penn State's still in there, Ohio State's still in there. Those teams got to play. Still, that round robin still has to happen, and whoever comes out of that, I think, gets one of those spots. But then to your point from there, I mean, I think that's one of those teams can get in. I think with a loss to one of the others. Oklahoma is still a team you got to keep an eye on. Florida State's a team you still got to keep an eye on. But yeah, I do think if anybody goes undefeated in the Pac-12, then they're getting one of the bids because I think it's going to be the best league. And, top to bottom, it's going to be the toughest gauntlet you have. Again, other leagues are going to have good seasons. Again, the Big Ten, if you survive the Big Ten East and you are undefeated out of those, if Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State, any of those three beats the other two, then I think you have you certainly are getting a team out of the Big Ten. Again, if Georgia keeps being Georgia, they'll get in. But there are 2 spots left after that, and I think your Pac-12 champ gets one of them.
Absolutely. We've got to take a break. We got lots more coming up in the second hour. Of course, Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star with us right now. Rob Cassidy from Rivals.com will join us, and we'll talk more about Indiana landing Liam McNeely for the 2024 class. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. That was a big land. What is expected?
Yeah. No, I mean, it took a while, but no, that's a really big get for them. Just the Montverde, they really put themselves in great position with Montverde. I mean,
and with Derek Queen standing right behind him and him turning around to him and saying, "Oh yeah," and he's going to be calling Boogie Fland. I mean, I talk about that. I mean, and I think that's going to matter. The fact that someone commits is but if they are actively recruiting, that's a big difference. It makes a big difference. I do believe.
No, it definitely does. I mean, these guys like playing with each other. I do think we talk all the time as though American basketball is going to fall off or whatever. But one thing that I think has gotten progressively better over the last 15 years, in particular, is these guys are closer. These guys are closer nationwide, and everybody complains about it and says, I don't like them being close with their rivals. But you know what? They get tight in AAU ball. They go to all these events, and then after that, when you want them to play together for Olympic teams, they're better because when you bring Team USA together, these guys have known each other for 10 years at that point, 15 years at that point, and they can convince each other to come to college together and stuff like that, and they love this stuff. So, I mean, they have a chance of getting all those dominoes.
All right.
We go live here in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio coming to you. I appreciate you being with us. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star with us, along with Maxine.
Time. That's part of her contract. She's got to get on every once in a while.
Well, it's that time where we're going to really boost the. She's comfortable right there, buddy.
She's
a snuggle spot.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that can't see,
Maxine is on camera right now. Big moment.
She is, and just enjoying the heck out of it. Yeah. She knew we were going to be talking about big news for Indiana basketball. Yesterday, they land Liam McNeely live on ESPN between a showcase game that they were a Geico showcase game that they were showing, and he had all of his people behind him, including Derek Queen, who was behind him when he made his commitment to Indiana over Kansas. A couple things. That's 2 straight defeats. I don't want to make a huge thing out of it because it's not like Kansas is falling off. They're not landing guys. But they did get beat in this particular recruit because they ended up taking Rakestraw Passmore. And to me, they were waving the white flag. No, because these guys play the exact same position. But they land Liam McNeely. But now they have to land, in my opinion, at least Boogie Fland or Derek Queen, preferably. I don't want to say preferably, but Boogie Fland is I think the top rated point guard in the country. And so that would be a gigantic get for two reasons. Obviously, number one. Number two, this is another big time battle between Indiana and Kentucky. Alabama is up there, but I think this is down between Indiana and Kentucky personally. And if Indiana is able to win that battle, that gives them another big time win over a big time program for Mike Woodson, which that is something that has not happened in a long time.
Not that long.
Well, I mean, to beat these guys for
yeah, sure. No, I mean, I think it's a big deal. Like I'm not going to underplay this. It's a big deal to get these type of guys, and I think just he has consistently, since he got there, been able to win some national battles. Obviously, it's a little bit of a bigger deal than he's had, but I mean, getting Jalen Hood-Schifino was a big deal. Getting Malik Renew was a big deal. And obviously he has a foothold in Montverde Academy. Obviously, those guys have determined at this point that, he's a guy. Like, the coaching staff certainly has. The players will certainly say, okay, you can go to Indiana from Montverde and get there from here. You can be, you can be a guy taken out of there. So he's put himself in a really good position. It's just he has continued to show that he can get in there and battle and beat people and beat top players. And he doesn't win every one, and you're not going to when you're dealing with top 15, top 20 guys. You're fighting the whole country, but getting one on the board is a big deal. Getting a guy who can really shoot is a big deal. Beating teams of that caliber is a big deal. It's all big news. I mean, I think, again, like, I still, the question for me is not anymore, has not been anymore, can he go get a top guy? I think we're far past that discussion. And really, I think when he landed Hood-Schifino, that was really the end of it. As far as can he go to a national prep powerhouse and beat a lot of big time programs for somebody. Since then, that I think has been determined. I think that just the biggest question is fitting the pieces around those guys, and being able to have sort of a baseline that you get a kind of steady stream of guys who can play for you that aren't necessarily your superstars, but are rotation caliber guys that you might be able to get from in-state or locally or whatever. I think that's an area where you want to see him better to piece around it, but he is going to be able to get one and done caliber talent out of the Montverdes of the world. And that's a big deal. Indiana has had stretches where it's recruited phenomenally well. Like I don't think we should underplay some of the things that Tom Crean managed to do as a recruiter, or Archie Miller for that matter. I mean, all of those guys had some big recruiting wins of different styles. Obviously, again, Archie Miller lands the two biggest names to come out of the state at that point, and Romeo Langford and Trace Jackson Davis, and Romeo doesn't end up being what you hope, but but
he also came only because Rick Pitino got fired at Louisville. I'll always mention that.
Always, but still, it got him. Got him in the door. And Trace Jackson Davis was a big recruit, ends up being a multi-time All-American. They've been able to get great players in the past, so you can't act like they don't. But this does matter. It matters when you bring a guy on board. You're not sure what he was going to be as a college recruiter, because he'd been in the NBA for so long. Obviously, people had a lot of questions. How was he going to adapt to this? But the area that he's clearly been just fine in from the very beginning is being able to make the sell that I've been in the NBA. If you come play for me, I can get you to the NBA. And therefore, that gets him in the doors at Montverde Academy, where that's what those kids want. That's what they're there for, is to be NBA players. And that's, why they pick a college. And so he's been able to make the sell to a basketball factory, that this is the next stage in your assembly line is you come here. We you out into an NBA player in a year or two. And so putting himself in that, discussion is a big deal. And he just shows he's successful again.
Well, and Paul Biancardi mentioned it from ESPN, who hosted that little halftime deal. But the Jalen Hood-Schifino piece is more important than people think, because as Paul Biancardi mentioned, he was not a projected first-round draft pick. He was not expected to be a first-round draft pick, but he goes to Indiana and becomes a first-round draft pick. That is what that is, and he mentioned that. So you get that mentioned by Paul Biancardi on ESPN, which, boom, guys are watching that. That's what matters. That's player development, and that's what guys want. That's what Mackenzie Mbako wants. That's what Liam McNeely want. They want to come here. It's not that they don't want to be in Bloomington long, but their goal is Bloomington is just a waypoint for what they want, where they want to be, and that is the NBA.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, and that's, again, it's very important that we say this does not exist for the purpose of insult, or whatever. I mean, like, they pick Indiana for a reason. They can pick anywhere, and they choose to pick Indiana, and that stands out, and that matters. That is going to matter long term. But yeah, these guys intend to play this sport professionally. That's the point for them. And just because Hood-Schifino doesn't make it does not mean Mbako is going to make it. Doesn't mean McNeely's going to make it. I mean, that's important to work. It's a different position. It's going to need different things. But Hood-Schifino stands out because it's point guard too. Basically, like, it's, and he entered, I think, you could argue he was was like the most NBA ready guard coming out of college. In point guard coming out of college, I would say, like,
his mind was already there.
Yeah, just his ability to grip the game was really, really there. I mean, he's not the most physically talented out of the group, but he's the most in control. He's got all the physical tools. It's not like he doesn't have them. There are other guys who got some other things. Anthony Black is longer. The Thompson twins can play point, obviously, and they're younger and they've got raw talent, and they didn't come out of college, but still, certainly Scoot Henderson, is obviously more game ready. But out of the guys who came out of college, it was just impressive to me, just even at Summer League, just the degree to which he really had the game on a string. And so much of that developed over a year in Indiana. He was really good to come out to start with. And certainly you don't know how things change if Xavier Johnson doesn't get hurt. He's not thrust in a position where he's got to be in charge of everything, so early in his career. But, being able to sell that, the intellect of the game, that you can point to development, you can point to areas where he got better in the course of his time in Indiana. And, they also noticed it. I mean, I think it matters that, we asked Jalen Hood-Schifino about his year at Indiana at the Combine. And he did point out that basically when he got to the end of the year, the guys, the coaching staff told him, "You're ready, go, go." Like, there was no attempt to, for their own purposes, keep him around. It's like, oh, you could do this one more year, you could do that one more year, and maybe if you play one more year, we'll be able to do this, that, or the other thing. There was an awareness that this is what it looks like when a guy's ready, and you shouldn't hold him back at that point. You should go let him play in the NBA. And so he's in a good situation with the Lakers. I mean, I'm sure he's not going to get a ton of playing time this year. But I'll probably be a second unit guy and, be able to make an impact and make a name on a team that should be a playoff team, and run around with LeBron James, from time to time. So
I see him as someone who is going to learn and just continue to slowly work his way up and become an NBA player. Without question. Indiana Creekwalker says that he thinks that McNeely is a 2 to 3 year player, and I have to disagree. For one thing, you better hope not, because that's not that's good for fans, for him to be here for 3 years. But if he's here for 3 years, that means he's not developing quick enough to get to the league, which is, as someone who is ranked as highly as he is and thought of as he is, 2 years max. If you're not in the league in 2 years, that's a problem. You don't see a lot of juniors going unless you're 7'2" or something like that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that's worth noting. Obviously, the bigs situation is different. You have to view them at a different scale because of the way the game's changed. So a guy like McNeely probably needs to stick around. I mean, I haven't watched a lot of film on him. I'm not going to sit there and say, okay, this is where he's at. This is what he needs to do.
Well, he shot 45% from behind the arc last year, and he's currently shooting 40%.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so that's Grady Dick, Like he should be. Doesn't mean he's going to be the number one guy or whatever. Probably isn't. But basically you get to 10 to 20, and some teams that already have a lot of things, that have a lot of pieces they need to be a contender, but are missing some key ones. And you draft a guy that could be a shooter right away, and he could be in that, Grady Dick, Christian Braun territory, and Indiana hasn't had one of those guys. So it would be a big deal if he comes in and develops that way. So yeah, no,
you got Kansas coming in this year as well with Indiana.
You don't want to have him 3 years. 2 years is okay. If you come in and you have a year where he's pretty good, but you could say, he's one step away from being terrific. That matters. I mean, Benedict Mathurin played 2 years at Arizona. Tyrese Halliburton played 2 years at Iowa State. And Halliburton wasn't supposed to be an NBA draft pick. Mathurin kind of was. And so when those guys got going, there was something to be said for them to take another year where they really got dominant. Obi Toppin was a 2-year guy at Dayton. A second year can matter. A second year can really thrust you ahead. But sometimes guys are ready after one. And if McNeely's ready after one, he should go after one. And that's not bad for Indiana at all. The tough part is you then keep having to get these guys. That's not the not easy part is that you can't, that you got to win one after another, and you're not going to win them all. You're not about 1,000 here.
And I also think that I've said this before. It's taken Mike Woodson and his staff a couple of years to really get in deep into the recruiting pocket of everything, which now I think that for Indiana players, they're there. Whether you're talking about Trent Sisley or somebody else, they're in with those guys, but they're also nationally. And that you can't just do that overnight. Well, they're there now. That's where they are. So this class begins. I think this is the class that begins it. Not a lot to draw from the state class this year that wasn't already kind of taken. But next year they will. I think they get Trent Sisley personally, but that's down the road. But also you'll have other national guys that they're going to be recruiting, and so it is turned into a. And then you don't know who are you going to lose through the portal, because I promise you somebody is going to leave. And I'm not saying who that is, and I'm not guessing. I'm just guessing. I don't know. I have no idea. But
at this point,
it always happens.
Right. Yeah. No. At this point, especially heading into it, it could go a bunch of different ways. I mean, you don't know who it's going to be, but it's probably going to be somebody. Obviously, you have a big list of guys that are going to get their. You're going to see them figure out who they're going to be. Like where they're going to fit. I mean, you look at, Caleb Banks and CJ Gunn. Are both of those guys happy after this year? You don't know. That's kind of, I think, a key piece is if one of those guys isn't playing, they might have some questions as to what they do next. Then you've got all these other guys from the portal that you've added. Presumably Kel'el Ware is in the draft next year, presumably. But you're looking at, Malik Renew. Is Malik Renew happy after this year? Does it work out for him? Does somebody else surpass him? That kind of thing. Obviously, you add Ja'Kai Newton and Gabe Cupps to the situation. You imagine after a year they'll still be happy and at least have a sense of who they're going to be. But there's a lot of minutes to be, or not a lot of minutes. I mean, there are several guys, fighting for those spots in the front court. With Mbakbo and Ware, and so is everybody happy after that, and does everybody want to stay where they are? Is a pretty significant question.
Yep, it's going to be because Valaire and Derek Queen, ironically, Paul Biancardi also said that he's the best big man in the country. So there's minutes again, but we'll see. Hey man, what's up next for you?
Yeah, preseason game tonight. Head over to Gainbridge for the first time this year. I missed Fan Jam on Saturday, thanks to Chloe Peterson for pinch hitting for me on that one. But yeah, so they'll play the Hawks tonight. That'll be an interesting one. Get a better sense of where everybody's at. Obviously, presumably Tyrese Halliburton's going to play in this one. He took the first 2 off after FIBA. They let him kind of chill there for a good and obvious reason. So I think you're probably going to see most of what the Pacers are going to be, at least early in this game. And then on Friday, they got another one, but we got a lot going to have. Really got to gear up. I got 9 days to get all of the enterprise stuff I want to get done before the opener. So I'm going to be really busy this week trying to do actual work.
Well, that's a lot. Make sure you're giving him a follow, Dustin Dopirak at the Indy Star, and follow his content and be a subscriber. I am. Keep local content alive, brother. Thank you. Appreciate you so very much.
Maxine says hi. You guys have a good one.
Tell Maxine a great day. Mac with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio, including Rob Cassidy from Rivals.com to talk about more basketball recruiting. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Jim, that was so perfect that when you said back with more right after this, my alarm went off right as you said that. You didn't even need a cue. You're on it today.
Oh, man. And this is a hard one because this is the off day. This is time-wise.
Yeah. And it's a big news day.
Oh, yeah.
With a packed house of guests. Rusty Gator. Do they actually serve gator at the Rusty Gator?
I'm sure it's Cajun cuisine.
Oh, awesome. I don't know if that was there when I was in Bloomington.
In Bedford, actually.
Oh, okay.
All righty.
About ready?
What time is it?
It's 7:02, so it's about
No. That's your time. I just meant the minutes. I don't ever say.
It's
I
about.
don't ever try to say, and just so people understand, I don't ever say why I don't say good morning is because the show is recorded in the morning, but it goes out to all the radio stations who all play it at the midday or afternoon hour. So we're a timeless show, if that makes sense. I'm going to try to cut short this segment short and maybe get Rob Cassidy on earlier. So we can go whenever.
Okay. The time I have is about 15 seconds here. But I'll go ahead and give it a couple and I'll count you in. Here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here for our second hour on this Monday, October 16th. Already been a great day with Greg Rakestraw, Don Fischer, Dustin Dopirak. Joining us, of course, Greg Rakestraw from ISB Sports and with the Colts, Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers, and Dustin Dopirak with the Indy Star. Tomorrow, a great lineup as well as always with Mike DeCourcy, Chronic Hoosier, and going to get Greg Doyle on to talk about the piece that he has out up in regards to transfers in the IHSAA. But yesterday, Indiana basketball got the news that Mike Whitson and the Hoosier Nation was looking for with a commitment for the first commitment for the 2024 season for Mike Whitson and crew from Liam McNeely, a number 13 rated player in the country from Montverde, This is the third Montverde player that they have been able to land, and they're working on a fourth right now. But this is how it went down yesterday.
Tell us where some of your family has played in the past.
So my great-grandfather played at Tulsa University. My grandfather played at TCU. My mother played at Rice. My uncle played at SMU and Baylor. And hopefully, well, now I'll get to play in college too.
Yeah, now it's time to decide your future. You're down at two schools.
Yes, sir.
Indiana and Kansas. William McNeely, where are you going to play college basketball next season?
So before that, I'd like to thank my family. They showed an unconditional amount of love and support. I'd like to make a special thank you to my mother. She's been my number one supporter and just sacrificed so much for me. Next, I'd like to thank my teammates for being here. Those are my brothers. I love each and every one of them. And then lastly, I'd like to thank God for allowing me to be in this opportunity. Without God, I'd be nothing. I give all my glory to him. With that being said, I'll be committing to Indiana University. Go Hoosiers.
He's a Hoosier! Now tell us about the phone and three-point shot. Explain that. Break it down for us real quick.
So when I make a three in the games, I'll go like this. Call me. I got the telephone here. It's my thing now.
Yeah, that's Coach Woodson on the other line now.
Coach Woodson.
What separated him in the recruiting process?
I mean, Coach Woodson.
Oh, lost it there. But he talked about Coach Woodson, and he also talked about reaching out to Derek Queen, who was standing right behind him, off to the right. But and he also spoke of recruiting Boogie Flan, openly recruiting Boogie Flan. So I know I see a lot of people making their prognostications on the comments. I haven't been able to get to any of them today because of our long list of guests, but I thank everybody for hitting up it early. Fozon from Amon Jordan on there as well. Fred, of course. Trent checking in. Tony V from Whitehall, Michigan. John W. from Southern Bound County. Forrest down there in South Georgia. Kevin from Monroeville, Indiana. Bill up in the UP. Man, that's got to be a little chilly today. Tony from Maryland. Man, you guys are all over today. Appreciate you. Doug, appreciate you, sir. Gritty in from down there in Evansville, where you can find us on the Ref 97.7 ESPN each day. Also, don't forget the Fan over in Fort Wayne, 1380 The Fan, Fort Wayne Sports Station, WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM up in the region, Hammond and across Chicago, as well as Marengo as well on WBRO 89.1. Of course, you can always find us on YouTube wherever you are, no matter that. Ty jumping on from Plainfield. Appreciate you guys. As always, make sure I'm trying not to miss. There's so many. There's Kent from Mount Pleasant. Royville, the Ballers. Donald, when did you move to Georgia? He's a hometown guy, I believe. Kent asking Mondays are always a little bit recording back a little bit later because of Don Fisher's. But Scott jumping on from Owensboro. There's Derek. Appreciate you. Philip, John jumping on from Southport. Caleb, appreciate you. He says he saw a report over the weekend that IU is the most profitable athletic department 2022. That's an old report, I believe, and it's flawed because I forget. I'd have to go back and look at that, but it's not exactly how it sounds. Dave, how are you doing, brother? It's from Jacksonville. Kevin on from Jeffersonville, down in the southern part of the state, right where I'm from, down there. I went to Floyd Central, of course. Tanis on as well. Appreciate you guys. So many hitting the Andy Moore Honda hotline up, and you can do the same. If you are not in an area where we're on radio, you can find us on YouTube easily each and every day, Monday through Friday. You just go to @Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and please For those of you that aren't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. It helps us immensely. John's over in dreary Cincinnati, he says. Maybe listening to us on WKRP in Cincinnati. Kevin didn't like the football. Of course, that's not lost on anybody. Jamie, let's see. Ed, I can't remember if I've hit you up or not already. I believe I've got everybody. Here's Nick. Let's see. I think I've got everybody that has. If not, I apologize. Trying to get everybody that is jumping on here. Andy as well. So you've got the commitment of Liam McNeely. He is going to do his best to do some recruiting on his own. And I promise you, he will be in the ear of Derek Queen. That's his teammate. So that's a rare kind of a thing to be. Normally it's got to be, it's like the situation with him and Boogie Fland, where he's going to have to reach out to him, which of course they know each other from the AAU circuit and all of that. And I'm sure he will reach out to him and tell him, hey man, this is going to be awesome if you come here, yada, yada. I can tell you Indiana will not lose anything because of NIL. Hoosiers for Good is doing an incredible job. And do not confuse yourself that it's there is no other NIL program for Indiana that truly matters. I don't care what you think. I know. Okay. Just because Hoosiers for Good does not wave a flag and do all that stuff, the scale of difference is unbelievable. It's comparing it to Major League Baseball to a single A independent team. That's how far they are above anybody else, any other NIL contributors. Hoosiers for Good makes the difference. Hoosiers for Good provides the NIL package that draws these type of athletes. Do not kid yourself. I'm telling you what I know. And landing those players, it's not inexpensive. It's not cheap. So if you are going to participate in NIL, Hoosiers for Good or Hoosiers Connect is the only way to do that. So just a little throw out. We had Tyler Harris on the program with us last Friday, and they've got tons of special things coming up. He mentioned some big news coming up on October 14th, which is I think November 14th, just around the corner. It's about a month from now, but we'll have more information about that as we get closer. Boogie Fland, Howard thinks that IU needs to go after Cooper Flagg. He's the best high school player he's seen since LeBron. Yeah, I don't think that. I think that they're just too far. They would be too far behind in that, and they're all in on Boogie Fland. They are all in on Boogie Fland. Not only that, I still believe, in talking to a source in New York, that they're the leader. But that is a slight lead. Don't kid yourself. It is very slight. So let's take a quick break before Rob Cassidy joins us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. We're back with that and more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hello, Rob. How you doing, brother?
Not great. Can you hear me? Like the speaker on my phone is fucked and my headphones are dead. So I don't know.
Yeah, that sounds like me on a live remote, man. Every time, but I can hear you. Yes.
Okay, that's good. All right, good then. All right.
How was your weekend?
I don't know. I don't even really remember it. I just landed last night. It was a whirlwind. I was at Wooten in Las Vegas, so it was, nothing ever stops.
Yeah. Well, at least you weren't in Vegas this weekend.
I guess. It's not like I had time to do anything there.
That's what I was thinking. I'm like, man, I hope he's not out at USA. I'm like, oh my God, that'd be 2 weekends in a row wearing him out.
I was in Orlando at Hoop Exchange right before that. So it's, I'd like to have a day off one day, but I don't know if that's ever in the card.
Yeah, I think that a lot. And then I realized that ain't happening.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, last Sunday I was like, or like it was late Saturday night, and I was thinking, okay, tomorrow I just want to relax, chill, and then it dawned on me, hey, dumbass, you've got like a 4:00 flight to Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's one thing after another. It's I'm hoping to not do anything this upcoming weekend, so we'll see.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah.
All right, gentlemen. We go live in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, October 16th. Hope you're doing well. Joined now by Rob Cassidy, Rivals.com, National Director of Basketball Recruiting. And Rob, we talked about this a week or so ago, Liam McNeely's decision coming soon. Everyone thought Indiana was the faraway leader, but that never seems to mean as much anymore. But Indiana does land Liam McNeely, and it's not only do they land him in a forum that is very big and is a great commercial for Mike Woodson and the program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, I think everybody was kind of taking notice of what Woodson's been doing there on the recruiting trail, but, it's never bad to have it there on national television either, just to remind people, I think. And, it's also, there's something to be said for kind of the pipeline that continues to be built to the best high school basketball program in the country. There's the kind of perks that come with that. When you start landing guys from Montverde, the spotlight gets brighter.
Absolutely. And there are yet another member of that program that they're going after. And Liam McNeely mentioned him, Derek Queen, who was standing behind him actually when he makes his commitment. So that can't be bad for Indiana as well, although he still has a visit coming up. Probably, I guess that's this weekend at Maryland. And I'm speaking of Derek Queen.
Yeah, and that's the big one for him. I think everybody just thought it was going to be Maryland for Queen. And from what I've heard from people around there, they are using, if not their whole NIL budget, to try to lure him over a good chunk of it. So I think it's going to be tough to stand toe-to-toe with them here. With Queen, I wouldn't rule it out. But I think Maryland still, in my mind, is the team to beat there. We'll see how the visit goes. I like Indiana's chances more with Boogie Fland than I do with Derek Queen, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's kind of been my thought as well. And even though it's a slim margin that everybody I keep talking to, it's still they're in the lead by a slim margin. And I hate to put a prediction out right now, but as of right now, I think they look very good to land Boogie Fland.
Yeah, no, I agree with you too. His high school coach I think he'll be back from Italy sometime this week if he's not already back today.
I believe I thought he got back Sunday. Did he not?
Okay, maybe he got back Sunday. I've been out of town. I haven't had time to talk to anybody. I've been at Wooten in Las Vegas, so I haven't had a moment to breathe. So he might be back Sunday. But I would expect a decision in pretty short order. Before he left, he had told me that the plan was to do an announcement at the school at Bishop Stepanek there in White Plains, and that they would do it sometime after he returned from vacation. So I would expect it the next week or so. Hopefully not this weekend, because I have told my family I will not be working this weekend. So if that happens, that will turn me into a liar.
Oh, well, we'll find out. I mean, as I said earlier, I'm like, you can never tell. Guys are expected to go someplace at the last second. Flory Badunga, I think, was a surprise. I thought he was going to head to Duke, and yet Kansas is able to get him. I think that was big reason was NIL. Kansas is one of the best NIL basketball programs out there, along Indiana probably right behind them. But it's landing Boogie Fland would be a gigantic land for Indiana as well to go along with Liam McNeely. And you heard Liam talking yesterday when he committed to Indiana that he will be in the ear of Boogie Fland. And that just guys committing to a school, I don't think matters as much. But when you have them actually saying, hey, man, this would be special between us, I think that matters.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that definitely they're going to listen to their peers. I think the biggest thing with landing Fland, if Indiana is able to do it, in my estimation, would be if you zoom out and you look at the snapshot of what's happened here. They held off Kansas to land McNeely, and they're going to now hold off Kentucky. I think that just says so much about the big picture of where they kind of stand in the recruiting world in the era of name, image, and likeness. If they're able to back-to-back beat those two programs for guys that they want, They're sometimes to beat Kansas and Kentucky for guys that are kind of on the periphery that they don't care much about. But this is standing toe-to-toe with those programs and winning. And, if they can do that in two straight recruiting battles like this, I think it says a lot about the big picture.
Yeah, because you can actually go back to Mackenzie Mbako, which was a battle between IU and Kansas. So this is actually two straight big-time battles that they've won over Kansas. Not that Kansas is hurting in any way. But then you mentioned Kentucky, and Alabama is there for the services of Boogie Fland. So to beat Kentucky heads up in a battle, that is another head turner, I think, for people and for kids alike.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, this stuff tends to compound. That's kind of how it happens. Now, it can all be undone if the success on the floor isn't there. But success in recruiting, and I've always said this, tends to compound because, kids see this happen and they think something's going on and they want to be part of that. And it's happened as long as time. I mean, you saw it happen a few years ago at Michigan, where Juwan Howard amassed the #1 recruiting class. Now, he didn't do much with it, and it's kind of fallen apart on him because, it kind of fell flat on the floor. But if you can get something started, it can snowball on you quick. Either way, good or bad. And in this case, it seems to be snowballing in a positive direction.
Yeah, we can look at Kentucky and John Calipari. I think he had the #1 recruiting class 9 out of 10 years. Came up with one national title out of that, but they won a lot of games.
Yeah, they sure have. It's good to have that talent on your side. It's incredibly difficult to win a national title. That's the goal for everybody, but it's baby steps at this point, right? And if you can show a little progress every year, I think, and keep kind of that positive trajectory going while you're landing these top kids, it can become an every year thing pretty quickly, I think.
What is Indiana getting in Liam McNeely? They've gotten Mackenzie Mbako, which his plan is to be in one and done, but we don't always know that. Jalen Hood-Schifino didn't come as a projected first-round draft pick. He becomes that, gets that opportunity to go. Mackenzie Mbako would like to be a one and done, but let's say he's not. And then you've got Liam McNeely and those two guys, which is great to have. But what does Liam McNeely bring to the Indiana roster?
Yeah, he might not have the pro upside of an Mbako just because of the size and everything. But when I talk about Liam, I always talk about one of the more well-rounded players in the class. There's nothing that he does badly. You might not look at him and be like, okay, he's the best shooter in the class, or he's the best defender in the class, or the best ball handler. He doesn't do anything the best. But there are just no holes. And every time you think there is one, he closes one. He's become a much better defender this year. He's become a much better shooter in the last year and a half. And he just keeps evolving. And it's getting to the point where in a sport, in modern basketball, versatility is king. And he's become so versatile because he does so many things so well. He's one of these kids where you go out and you watch him, and I've seen him play probably 30 times now, and he never seems to have a truly bad game. Like, even like top players sometimes, like you go see a DJ Wagner or something, you'll come away and it's like, oh, that wasn't his best effort. But he doesn't have a game where he hurts the team. And I think that's huge. He's a very consistent, stalwart player. And, I think it's good to have one of those in the fold, obviously.
I think Indiana has to land 2 out of these 3 that they are going after, of course. And Boogie Fland seems to be the more a better chance than Derek Queen, but they're not out of the running for all three. What if they were to land all three, besides the level of talent that would bring in? What would that say about Mike Woodson and what they're doing?
Yeah, I don't know if there's much of a difference as far as a perception standpoint from landing 2 out of 3 or landing 3 out of 3. I mean, either way, I think it's a statement. I think when this cycle started, if you would have told me that Mike Woodson was going to land 2 5-stars, I think anybody would have taken that, right? I think this is kind of become a product of expectations where everybody's looking at the 3 now. But I mean, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3 doesn't matter. It's still a positive cycle, I think. And I think it's something that's going to get kids in the future excited about it, especially when you think about where the kids come from. If it is Flan and McNeely, then it's another Montverde guy, and it's a guy from Stepanek. And, those aren't schools that produce a D1 guy once every 2 or 3 years. These are schools that every single year have a recruitable guy for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, and Mike Woodson at first was a lot of people thought that he was not going to be able to do the things that you need to do to land these guys, because you've got to travel, you've got to do this, do that, and he has proved a bunch of naysayers wrong already.
Yeah, I think rightfully so. When you look at a guy who hasn't really had any head coaching experience in college at his age, I think that it was natural to be like, is he going to do what it takes, especially in a world of recruiting that's evolving quickly, and usually, credit to him, some guys of his age can fall into a lull of that's not the way things should be done, or that's not the way things have always been done, so I'm stuck in my ways. And he didn't do that. And he's adapted, and he's shown the ability to recruit in this landscape. And I think that, he deserves a ton of credit for that, because, I'm a guy that's getting old too. And I find myself stuck in my ways sometimes. And sometimes, it's an evolve or die situation, and he's chosen to evolve. And I think he's reaping the fruits of that now.
Rob Cassidy is joining us, the National Director of Basketball Recruiting for Rivals.com. Let's say Derek Queen decides to go to Maryland, whatever. This still opens up the opportunity for Indiana to land some other big-time uncommitted player out there.
Yeah, it either does that or it allows them to save a scholarship to the transfer portal. It's that's
they've already got one of those right now. They're only using 12 out of the 13.
Oh, yeah. And I don't know. I don't have a list of who that might be in front of me. I'm actually standing on the side of a construction site outside of a coffee shop where the power's turned off on me.
Are you getting whistled at? Are you getting cat calls?
This isn't an especially deep class. 2024 anyway. 2025 and 26 are much deeper, especially in the big man department. So I don't know where they would go if they miss on Queen, if they would go ahead and try to find another big, or if they would wait, or maybe try to take a transfer. I have no idea what would happen there.
Yeah, that'll be the question, but it gives them a lot more cachet, I guess, behind what they could chase, because there's some guys out there, and I don't know if you just know off the top of your head, but who are some guys that are uncommitted that would fill that role?
There's no way I can go off the top of my head right now. My brain is so zapped. I'd have to have my spreadsheet in front of me. But it does, like you said, it does give them some cachet, because some of these guys, you can point to, all right, come in and play with Boogie, play with Liam. Boogie's kind of known as one of the best distributors in this class. He makes guys around him better. He has a long track record of proving to do that. And if you have him in the fold and you have Liam in the fold, I think it's easier to recruit guys with options,
Well, and one name, which I know Indiana's fans are still thinking about, that I just don't think that Rivals is going to miss out on, but is Mr. Harper.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a long shot with Dylan. I talked to him this weekend. He was out at Wooten in Vegas with me. I think he's still going to Rutgers, although things are getting tense over there because he's going to take some more visits. He was back there on unofficial this weekend after he left camp. I think that Auburn is in play there. I think that Duke has re-energized. They were in to see him 2 weeks ago. I think, and Kansas. He wants to visit Kansas. I don't know if that will happen. I think that those three are more likely. I think that's kind of a pipe dream for Indiana at this point. I guess you never know. Once you get Flan and McNeely in the fold, maybe he becomes more attractive. But as of right now, I'd be shocked if he landed at IU.
I just looking down the list. You've got Patrick Ngamba, from Fairfax, Virginia. He's a center, big 6'10" guy who is not committed right now.
He's pretty much. I think UConn likes where they stand with him. They're in there. Kansas State's in there. Kentucky just made a play there.
But yeah, it's going to be it's so weird because you don't know what your roster is going to be next year anyway, because you know what you do have, but you don't know who might be unhappy and hit the portal. I think that there should be a way I think they should sign 2-year deals now. Since you have NIL and you're getting all this money, especially these bigger players, they're getting some serious coin, man. We're talking 6 figures. There should be a way that a 2-year, I hate to call it a contract, but a 2-year contract to stay at the school unless they turn pro or something like that.
I'd have a hard time agreeing with that, just because the coaches, if coaches can leave anytime they want, as long as that can happen, I feel like players should have the ability to leave anytime they want. I know it's not good for the game, probably, to have this much turnover, but as far as just like a pure labor practice standpoint goes, as long as these coaches can jet, and they have the ability to jet, the players should have the ability to jet.
Well, that would be a caveat too, that because I think that was in there before, but if a coach leaves, then that makes that null and void that you have that opportunity. But other than that, I would like to see a 2-year agreement, unless they turn pro or the coach leaves.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to, maybe just for the sake of the sport, go to it, whether, I agree with it or not. The turnover at this rate, like some turnover, I think is just fine, but like having to rebuild your roster every year I just wonder long term how that affects fan bases, getting to know these players. And, I don't know. Like, I don't know how it'll go. It might not have any effect. This is new to everybody. So I guess we'll see how that plays out in the long term.
And I look at the possibility for Indiana, if they were able to land a Boogie Flan, then you've got Xavier Johnson, who is going to be leaving and could ultimately be the top point guard in the Big Ten. He's not being recognized as such right now because he didn't play much of last year. But we don't know how that's going to turn out. Regardless, he's going to be gone. Let's say they get Boogie Flan and he's a one and done. This is the kind of momentum they want for landing a guy like Jalen Harrelson.
Yeah, anytime you look at the one and done situation, anytime you can do it, I think it used to be looked at as a bad thing because you want continuity on your roster. But especially in the transfer portal era, it's the best thing you can have. It's a walking advertisement for you. When the only thing kids care about is NIL money and the ability to get to the league, you have to almost have it. And if you can point to it, like they can point to it with Hood Shafino, it can pay off for you very quickly, especially in the transfer portal. And I think that helped with Mbako. I think that if you can say, okay, it didn't work out for you at your last stop, come here, and this is what we can do for you, and you have stuff to point to, I think that you can become a juggernaut.
As far as NIL, I've said that Kansas is in no question. I think they are their school is number one as far as NIL because they're similar to Indiana. They're a basketball school. While their football team has been more exciting and fun to watch, they're still a basketball school, and that's where their focus is, as it is with Indiana. But I think that those two are not that far apart in NIL, and I don't know. Kentucky is close to that, but I think those are the top 2 schools when it comes to NIL.
Yeah, no, I agree. And let's call a spade here. It helps that Kansas has kind of become Adidas's flagship school. And, I'm not insinuating that Adidas is paying kids. They're definitely not. Well, anymore. I hope
anymore.
But, I mean, it definitely helps that they have that in their corner,
And Indiana happens to be an Adidas school.
Yeah. So, I think that, that those things matter now. Like, they always mattered. They matter more in the public eye now, I guess is the better way to put it.
Yeah, as Bill Self would say, we just need help getting some real guys.
Exactly.
What's up next for you, man? Where are you going? Because you're always off somewhere watching these guys.
I am hoping to stay home this weekend. I need to make a stop by Overtime Elite and see some of those guys down there in Atlanta that recently transferred over there. So I'll probably do that in the next couple weeks. And then the season starts, and there are big events. I'm going to Hoop Hall West in Phoenix to see some West Coast guys. There's always the Thanksgiving week thing in Atlanta that I'll be at, Holiday Hoopsgiving, and then it just starts all over again. And
so you'll be at the Hoopsgiving for Indiana Auburn?
I will probably be down. I will definitely be down there for the high school event. I don't know if I'm going to stick around for the college event, which is the next week, but I might be.
Oh, I did not realize that.
Yeah, there's
hopefully,
two back to back.
Hopefully you stick around and we'll have you on live down there. But
all right, well, if I'm there, I will let you know for sure.
But so what goes on with the high school portion of that?
It's they bring in teams from all. It's just like the college event where they bring in teams, non-conference matchups, and they usually bring in a couple teams from up north, and then some teams from Florida, and then some Atlanta teams will be there too. And it's more of a showcase than a tournament. Where they'll just they'll manufacture matchups and they'll play 6 or 8 games over 2 days from teams that usually don't see each other, and that's kind of how it is.
That sounds like a great time to see some great prospects. Any one particular you're planning on looking at there?
I'd have to I don't even know what the matchups are. They're always good. I think Montvert's there this year. I'd have to look. I'm not positive who's there, but it's always, they kind of base the teams they bring in on, the guys that are highly ranked. So there's always guys.
And speaking of Montverde, we talk about them a lot, obviously, because Indiana's had such a pipeline. But who's some of the guys there that maybe are juniors and sophomores that are going to be heard from here soon?
They've got Curtis Givens there, who actually he's a senior. They're a pretty senior heavy team this year. I mean, it's the best basketball team in the country this year. I don't know how anybody's going to beat them. When you they have at least 3 and maybe 4 McDonald's All-Americans. So a lot of those young guys will be sitting behind guys like Cooper Flagg and behind, Derek Queen and behind Liam McNeely and behind Curtis Givens. And they've got Robert Wright, the Baylor commit. So it's probably one of the more loaded high school basketball teams I've ever seen. I don't know how they're going to win. I don't know how they're going to lose any games. I'm sure somebody will beat them. But there aren't too many young guys there right now. They'll probably get some young guys. This is usually how Montverde operates, is once they graduate some dudes out, they'll go and reload. They'll recruit other people's rosters, and they'll have a much different look next year.
Well, we're looking forward to that. And make sure you find Rob's content. You can find it at thehoosier.com always, Indiana Rivals, or at rivals.com as well. And this is probably going to keep you busy writing, at least, even though if you stay home.
Yeah, always. There's never a dull moment, unfortunately. One of these days, I might actually get to take a nap. We'll see how that goes.
Well, buddy, go take one now. We appreciate you so much.
Thank you very much.
Rob Cassidy joining us here from Rivals.com, his Nationals basketball recruiting director for Rivals. So there you hear it. We both agree that Indiana is a slight leader for Boogie Fland. So while fans should, I think they should feel good. Just this one's one you have to hope comes true for the fans. Liam McNeely, I sent a post out on the Hoosier.com Friday night because I knew Saturday was going to be a crazy football day because besides Indiana playing Michigan at noon, my butt was going to be watching that Oregon-Washington game, which was awesome, which we didn't get a chance to talk about today. We'll talk more about all that tomorrow, but pretty basketball heavy today, obviously. But it's going to be an exciting week. I think the commitment from Derek Fland comes soon, like Rob said, and we've been saying. His coach has been out of town, went to Italy, so he's back. And I would not be surprised to see that happen this weekend. I'll check into that and we'll know more, or I'll know more when that happens. We'll be talking about it hopefully tomorrow. And then you've got Derek Queen. He has a visit to Maryland, which is this weekend. Maryland has been crystal balled for Derek Queen. If you don't know what that means, that's the website publications predicting where he's going to go. But that one's, I don't know. But you did hear Rob say something very important, that he thinks that Maryland is going to throw a large chunk of their NIL towards him. That's a difference maker, because let's say that everyone else is offering him, well, you can do the math. A large chunk could make a difference in that. But if it's not that much difference and he truly feels, and he is an NBA prospect, that let's say it's $100,000 difference. Well, to you and me, that's a ton. That's not quite life-changing, but daggone it. Drop $100,000 in my lap, and it'll change my life in some form or fashion, I promise you. But it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. We're maybe only 2 weeks away from his announcement. It's going to come before November 15th, which is a month away. So when that happens, I don't know, but it could be within 2 weeks. He's got that visit next week, whether he takes a week or 2 weeks to do that. But Boogie Fland is the biggest target. I'm not going to lie, because Indiana has big guys. Not that they don't want Dairy Queen. They would love to have him, love to hit the trifecta here and get all three of these guys. That would probably give Indiana the number one recruiting class in the country if that were to happen. You land 3 5-stars, yeah, bingo. And then you have the number one recruiting class in the country. That says a lot to a lot of people. It tells a lot of schools that, hey, but if they don't already know, you're going to be in for a fight if Indiana is involved. With Mike Woodson and Indiana is committed from an NIL standpoint. And I think you have to feel good about the way Indiana goes after these guys. This is what you have to do to land them now. And they've done an exceptional job. Woody's done an exceptional job. Remember, these are separate conversations. Woody doesn't talk about the NIL packages. And those things are kept separate. But they know what they have to offer. It basically comes down to what you are. If you're a 5-star, you fall into this category. That's going to take this amount, and this amount is probably a little bit bigger than you think. And that's just from when I talk about everything I talk about in NIL, I'm talking about Hoosiers for good. When I tell you they are the reason whether or not a player comes for NIL, it's Hoosiers for good. Believe you me on that. That is where the offer comes from that makes any kind of a difference. Everything else is, that's cool. That's a nice addition. Nothing to sneeze at. But trust me, I don't care if you see someone saying, "Oh, they're going to be in our deal," or this or that. That's cool. That's just an additional little add-on for them. But hey, we've got to cut out of here. It's been a great show, and I cannot tell you how much I appreciate everybody. RC for keeping us between the white lines, filling in for John, who'll be back tomorrow. Greg Rakestraw from ISB Sports. Don Fischer, of course, the voice of the Hoosiers. Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. And Rob Cassidy, the National Director of Basketball Recruiting for Rivals.com. Man, we've got lots more coming up tomorrow. We'll talk to Mike DeCourcy, of course, Chronic Hoosier, and see what else we can get lined up as well. Big thanks to you guys. Without you, we've got no reason to be here. Hope you're back tomorrow to join us again on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.
All right, Jim. I got to be